I cordially welcome you, sir.
Thank you. So thanks a lot. So today, at the outset, I like to thank the organizers of Puduvai Pedicon for giving me this good opportunity to share my knowledge. So my topic today is targeted neonatal examination in busy practice. So we'll go with the objectives of purpose, preparation, examination, communication, documentation, and we'll try to address some doorknob questions at the last. So I'm a pediatrician who's interested in neonatology. So coming into the purpose, so most of us now Tamil Nadu has improved that all newborn babies at the time of birth are attended by a pediatrician, and the primary examination is done at that time. So what is the purpose of newborn examination when you follow up the baby at the OPD? So that is the purpose of this slide. So it says that there is an important study which says that almost 5% of major congenital malformations and important findings are missed out at the time of primary examination, which are found out only at the follow-up examination. And of these, almost day 7 to day 8, new abnormalities have been found out. And dislocatable hip, which is a developmental dysplasia of the hip, a new murmur, and jaundice, a distended abdomen were the major abnormalities which were missed. So competency regarding the topic goes, it is a busy OPD. So how are we going to examine the baby in a busy OPD? So we need adequate training for that. So there are some online modules which I would like to suggest, like the preterm care eliminating ROP.com, which is an online module where the detailed examination of the newborn babies are given. And you can go through that online module. There are standard checklists for examination called as the neonatal infant physical examination checklist. AIMS protocols and other standard neonatology textbooks can give you the competency to do it. So I would like to give this 5 steps as the preparation, observation, examination, explanation, and documentation. So regarding the preparation, we should always try to get the case notes from the mother and get a short targeted history, which can be about the labor history, birth weight of the baby, UPGAR score, antenatal risk factors, anomaly scan if done, and the feeding history since birth. And always consider information from the carers and do not brush aside the concerns of the mother. So we are going from a paternalistic form of medicine to shared decision making, where the control of patient as well as the physician is very high. And gain a verbal consent and have an equipment checklist always in your OPD. A warm room is definitely essential, a neonatal stethoscope, a pulse oximeter, ophthalmoscope, a torch, tongue depressor, tapes, growth charts, a digital weighing scale, infantometer if possible, hand rub and gloves, and the most important equipment of all, a smartphone. Wash and warm hands. So now coming into the observation part. So we'll all observe the baby before touching it, because once the baby starts crying, we'll not be able to examine important findings. So going into the thin color, warmth and perfusion. So we can always see a perioral cyanosis, acrocyanosis, and jaundice. Then note the activity, range of movements, and posture and muscle tone. It can be done in a more structured way in a newborn behavioral assessment scale. So which is an extensive one, which includes almost 27 parameters. Or a simple Morose reflex can help us in identifying any gross problem in the baby, like an Erb's palsy. Amel-Thiessen scale is one other time-tested one where we can go for the adductor angle, popliteal angle, dorsiflexion angle, and scarf sign in age-appropriate angles, and it is very useful to assess the neurological maturity of the baby. Hammersmith neurological examination, developmental assessment scale for Indian infants, Denver scale, and a Trivandrum developmental scale comes in very handy to have in the OPD. So next, about the respiration, we can find out a retraction in the OPD. And one thing I'd like to introduce you is the dysmorphic features, which can be photographed and uploaded in this app called as Face2Gene app, where with this technology of digital dysmorphology, face analysis can be done by experts, and a diagnosis of a syndrome can be given to you. And it's available both in Apple iOS as well as Android phone. And anthropometry is again very important. So digital weighing scale, which gives you a correct weight with plus or minus 10 grams, an infantometer, and a good measuring tape, a non-stretchable one, which can measure you the head circumference. And of course, IAP growth charts and Fenton growth chart for a preterm baby. And this is an online tool called PediTools, where you can just enter the parameters and you can get a plotted growth chart, and you can keep it as a record for follow-up. And this is our own IAP growth charts, which is available as an app. So where gender-specific growth charts, IAP WHO growth charts are available till 18 years. Now coming into the examination proper, so we need to examine from head to foot. So I'd like to proceed this talk in a manner that we'll go into each examination and find out which are the red flag signs which needs immediate attention of us. So jaundice less than 24 hours, pallor, and port wine stain can be there. You can have a nevus sebaceous, a Mongolian spot, and you can also have a cradle cap or a seboria. You can have a salmon patch or a nevus simplex. So these are all variety of parameters you can have in a newborn skin examination, of which hemangioma also, right? So of which these are considered as the red flag signs: a jaundice, which is found out at less than 24 hours, a severe pallor, central cyanosis, or a new petechiae, which is unrelated to the birth found out. Regarding the head examination, you have a sunken fontanelle or a bulging fontanelle. You can have a cleft lip. You can have a asymmetric crying faces, which can be because of a congenital absence of depressor anguli oris muscle or a facial palsy. You can also have a plagiocephaly, which is very common, and it can be a deformational or positional plagiocephaly when you just mark the 4 major points in the front and back of the skull. And if you get a parallelogram, and if it is a trapezoid, then it is going to be a structural plagiocephaly because of synostosis, which may need intervention. And the most often missed abnormality is a cleft palate, especially a submucous cleft palate, which can be of great problem because the patient often, the child presents with feeding difficulty, failure to thrive, vomiting, regurgitation. Post-mucous cleft palate is often missed. And a ear tag can warrant genitourinary anomalies screening. And they can also have a tongue tie, which is very, very common cause of difficulty in feeding and may warrant a pediatric surgery intervention. A dacryocyst is often missed, and it is also an important finding. So of which a bulging or sunken fontanelle, subgaleal hemorrhage, cleft palate, tongue tie, dacryocyst warrants immediate intervention. And coming into the eyes, an absent red reflux, ROP screening, purulent eye discharge are important findings. Subconjunctival hemorrhage, yellow sclera, hazy cornea can be normal. Ptosis, squinting, and large eye warrants follow-up. Coming into the red reflux, which is not often done by us. So it is an easy procedure where you need a dark room and an ophthalmoscope where the ophthalmoscope light is focused on both the eyes, and you get a normal red reflux. It is okay. If it is absent or abnormal, it needs further ophthal evaluation. And this is a new study which says infrared reflex versus the red reflex. So this infrared reflex makes it even more easier to have the infrared filter in your smartphone and just photograph the baby's eyes. And this, they say, has got more sensitivity and specificity than your routine red reflex, especially in non-Caucasian eyes. Now coming into the examination of chest and CVS, an accessory nipple, murmur, failed pulse oximeter screening, a sternal lump, sternal retraction, and pectus excavatum are the findings which we can have. So this is often seen in laryngomalacia. You can also have a frequent complaint from the mothers in form of a pectus excavatum or more often a sternal lump. So these are all, this is just a prominent xiphoid process, which is normal. So of which a murmur and a failed pulse oximeter screening would be the red flag sign. And I would like to insist on a technique called inching technique, where we just start from the aortic area or the apex and just move the diaphragm by half of the diameter of the diaphragm, not hopping. So it is inching versus hopping. And inching helps us in not missing out any important murmurs in the newborn. So this, most of us would know about the pulse oximeter screening, which has to be done at less than 24 hours or at the time of discharge of the newborn baby, where a saturation of more than 95% in the right hand and the difference of less than 3 between the right hand and any one of the foot is a pass. And if it is less than 90%, it is a failed screening, or if it is 90 to 94 and the difference is more than 3%, it is a failed screening, which may warrant further investigation in form of ECG or echo. So this also can be done in an OPD. And regarding the murmur, in a well baby, a soft systolic murmur may not warrant any other investigation, just needs a follow-up. In a well baby with a harsh, loud murmur and dysmorphic faces or a heave or a thrill may need investigations. And if the baby is unwell and symptomatic with cardiac failure, of course, it needs investigation. And in all cases, a proper parental counseling is important regarding your plan. Now coming into the abdomen and the external genitalia, so we can have a diastasis recti, which is common and it is normal. An umbilical hernia is normal, may need an investigation for hypothyroidism. A single umbilical artery is often seen. An undescended testis is very often we don't examine by taking off the pampers, so we may miss out on an undescended testis. It is important to note for it. A hydrocele, hypospadias, and an absent anus is important because still the baby can pass meconium through a anovaginal fistula. So it is mandatory to look for the presence of anus. A pale stool is of paramount importance to rule out biliary atresia, and an ambiguous genitalia with just an enlarged clitoris and a fused labia warrants further investigation for congenital adrenal hyperplasia. And a common condition called urate crystalluria can produce an orange staining in your diaper, which is normal. So, and of course, of which undescended testis, pale stools, hypospadias, ambiguous genitalia, and absent anus are very important and warrants further management. And this is a stool color card, which can be printed and kept in your OPD, and even can be in some countries, they even give it to the parents that follow to find out if the color of the stool is from 1 to 6, it warrants biliary atresia screening. If it is 7, 8, or 9, it is normal. Examination of the back, spine, and extremities is also often missed. A sacral tag can be normal. A sacral dimple, which is less than 2.5 centimeters from the anus, is normal. And a scoliosis, a spinal swelling, which can be a lumbar meningomyelocele, lipomeningomyelocele, and a diastomatomyelia may need further investigation. And a polydactyly, which is especially at the thumb side. So postaxial polydactyly often is associated with other malformations. A preaxial one, which is near the little finger, may be normal. Syndactyly, a bilateral club foot may need investigation to rule out any spinal abnormalities. And you can have a developmental dysplasia of hip, which is often identified using a positive Galliasis sign. And of which polydactyly, club foot, and unilateral marrow are yellow signs, and scoliosis, spinal swelling, developmental dysplasia of hip. And one important thing is the paucity of leg movements, which can be a sign of septic arthritis. So regarding Barlow's and Ottoloni, there is a study again which says, so these are signs which we learn over and over again, but it is less often done by any of the pediatricians. So there is a study which says this Barlow and Ottoloni, when done by untrained persons, can miss out on developmental dysplasia of hip most of the times. So there may be a time in the future where we may go for ultrasound screening for developmental dysplasia of hip in all babies. Maybe a costly affair, but still that finds out the developmental dysplasia of hip more validly. Yeah, so coming into the communication part, so whatever abnormality we picked up during this examination should be clearly communicated, and you should have a follow-up plan for it. And whenever specialty opinion is needed, it should be arranged by us. And of course, the importance and schedule of vaccination should be emphasized. And this is a very interesting table which is found by the IAP TNSC Cuddalore branch, which I was very much impressed upon, where the vaccination schedule is correlated with the developmental milestones, and it's a very useful chart to have in your OPD. Then regarding the screening, as we said, ROP screening is important. Screening for congenital cataract with the red reflex, OAE or a BERA screening, metabolic screening in form of heel prick for hypothyroidism and other common metabolic abnormalities. As I said, a developmental dysplasia of hip screening with ultrasound, a pulse oximeter screening, and a screening for undescended testes. Documenting all these findings for future reference is very useful. And there are some online apps available for clinical management system where we can enter all those data and they're available for future reference. And there is a bigger one called Indian Neonatal Collaborative, which is an online portal where you'll have to apply and get a sanction for assessing it. And this is very useful in manner that there is a vaccine scheduler, there is a vision screening thing, there is a developmental, Denver developmental scale, and there is a Hammersmith infant neonatal examination. Everything is available online where we can just, with a few clicks, we can have the record of the baby for future reference. So coming into the doorknob questions. So these are questions where the parents can, like after getting all the consultation and when they get off the chair and go out of your room, they will turn back and ask you the most important question of all. So those are called as doorknob questions, of which inadequate breast milk is the most common question which most of the parents might ask you. They may have any one of these problems, and impaired glandular development where which results in real poor secretion of breast milk is very, very rare. So most often it is because of the psychological and other structural problems which can be addressed. And I'd like to introduce a terminology some of you might have already known. It's called purple crying, which is the second most common complaints, which is the infantile colic. So the purple is a mnemonic for peak of crying, unexpected, it resists soothing, pain-like phase is long-lasting, and it happens more in the evening. So it is the often dubbed evening colic by the practicing pediatrician. So why they have coined the terminology of purple is to make it more common. That is, it is very often seen. It is seen in most of the babies, and it does not need much of medications. It is self-settling. So to just make it make the parents more comfortable with this particular phenomenon, they have coined the term called purple crying. So, and a gastroesophageal reflux may be there. It warrants a proton pump inhibitor, but for a short course of 3 to 5 days, not for a long period of time. And there is one pathological condition called cow milk protein allergy. It can happen in a newborn who's exclusively breastfed. If the mother is having a lot of cow milk, so that is one thing which we can think of if there is recurrent GER in a baby with blood-stained stool. So. And jaundice, again, there is an app called Billy Scan, which where a color card is available, which is placed on the baby, and just a photograph can give you an approximate bilirubin value, which is a very useful non-invasive method of screening for jaundice. Then coming into the home remedies, which is again very often prescribed, the all famous gripe water, Bonison, and a lot of other things. And there is a very good study by Adi Sivam sir, which says that most of these home remedies are of no use at all, and just a good counseling is enough. Well, thank you for this opportunity, and I just leave the stage with my fond memories of Pondicherry. This is the Ananda Theatre, and this is the very good Sunday market, and of course our Gandhi statue. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. Very excellent presentation. Your slides were very picturesque and made us wonder as to which photograph you are going to project for the next. All in all, a very, very good presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the wonderful talk, sir. Next, I call upon stage Dr. Anand Kumar Ji, working as an assistant professor in Sri Venkateshwara Medical College, Ariyur, Pondicherry, whose areas of expertise is in neonatal